You're climbing through a cloud layer reaching all the way up to 18,000 feet. Climb power is set and flight level change is engaged with the autopilot trying to maintain a selected indicated airspeed. 5 minutes into the climb, you notice that your vertical speed drops to almost zero. You lean forward to look at your left wing to notice ice building up on the leading edge. Meanwhile, your autopilot disconnects. You resume manual control, but the control surfaces are stuck and hard to move. 4,000 feet, you break out of the clouds. With full power still set, you are finally able to maintain your altitude. As the weight and the drag reduces with the melting of the ice, you can decrease the power setting. You continue VFR to the next adequate airport to perform a precautionary landing. My name is Flo. Welcome to Foredeck. Now, this was only a bad story with a good ending. There are so many ways in which ice can screw up your day in an aircraft. In this video, we are going to look at why icing in particular is so bad, what types of ice exist, and what we can do about it. When ice collects on your airframe, it does not only hamper the function of wings, control surfaces, and propellers, but it can also restrict the functioning of radio antennas, pitot tube, static vents, carburetors, or even air intakes. In turbines, ice can form as well and can cause flame out or even structural damage as big chunks of ice separate from the blades and are sucked into the engine and compressor. Thin leading edges like the outside air temperature gauge, ice indicator, gear struts, propeller blades or antennas are usually the places where ice will accumulate first. The first place where ice will be present at the propeller is the spinner. You'd feel the engine start to work roughly as the ice spreads unevenly out towards the blades. A loss of power would be the result, and sometimes even structural failure of the engine and its mountings could be the case. If ice has accumulated on your prop, ice is certainly built up on the airfoil and stabilizes as well. The weight of the ice is actually way less concerning than the fact that ice on your lifting devices changes the cross-section of the airfoil and destroys lift, increasing drag and therefore increasing your stall speed at the same time. Now, those conditions in combination with reduced thrust because of icing on the propeller can become quite hazardous. Along with reduced performance, ice buildup on the pitot tubes or static ports can render primary flight instruments like airspeed indicator and altimeter unusable. VOR or ADF receivers used for navigation may stop working due to ice building up on the antennas. Even the center of gravity and the center of pressure can be affected by icing. Without the downward force of the tailplane, a conventional aircraft would dive nose down. Ice can accumulate on the tailplane before it begins to accumulate on the main plane or other parts of the aircraft, remaining unnoticed. With a less effective tailplane, due to the accumulation of ice, more upward pressure has to be applied to keep the aircraft straight and level. At a certain point, this could lead to an elevator stall, resulting in a nosedive. Sometimes even a single system malfunction can have a devastating impact. Air Force Flight 447 from Rio de Janeiro to Paris was stalled into the ocean by the pilots incorrectly reacting upon the disconnect of the autopilot by pulling the flight controls back, most likely due to the ice crystals on the pitot tubes. Many factors have played into the loss of 228 people, but the initial cause was the contamination of the pitot tubes, which are needed to display the aircraft's indicated airspeed. Three main types of icing are recognized, with each one having a different kind of impact on the aircraft. Clear ice or glaze ice is the worst form of contamination. It forms from large, supercooled water droplets that are below freezing but not frozen yet, in cumuliform clouds or freezing rain. And the problem with the supercooled water droplets hitting the airframe is that only a small part of the droplets freeze on impact. The majority spreads out towards the back where no ice protection is available before it slowly freezes, creating a large, solid sheet of ice with no embedded air bubbles to weaken its structure. As you can imagine, this ice formation severely disrupts the airflow, resulting in drag increases that may be as much as 300 to 500%. Often to a point where the engines do not deliver enough power to sustain altitude. The drag and weight is often accompanied by vibrations caused by unequal loading on the propeller blades, which can, in the worst case, lead to structural failure. Rime ice is a milky form of ice that forms when flying through stratiform clouds with small supercooled water droplets. It typically accumulates on the leading edge when aircraft skin temperature is below 0 degrees. The drop hitting the aircraft will freeze quickly without it spreading as clear ice does. With the instantaneous freezing of the droplets, air packets between the frozen particles remain, creating an irregular shape of the ice. The weight is not a major problem. The aerodynamic effects of the uneven shapes of rime ice are much more concerning. In some cases, clear ice and rime ice mix, thus forming mixed ice, which has the features of both types. In mixed ice, both large and small supercooled water droplets exist. It looks even more irregular than rime ice. They form in colder clouds where liquid and frozen particles are found simultaneously. It will accumulate rapidly and is difficult to remove. Frost is a type of contamination we all know. It typically occurs when a cold aircraft enters a warm and moist air by descending rapidly. It can also form on aircraft parked outside on a clear and cold night when the surface of the aircraft is cooled by radiation to a temperature below that of the surrounding air. Even though an aircraft might be IFR certified, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can fly that particular aircraft through clouds with possible icing. So if protection with D or anti-ice is not possible, ice has to be avoided by flying at different altitudes or different routes. I was scheduled for 3 flights the past 2 weeks. All of those 3 flights have been cancelled due to icing. It has no ice protection system whatsoever, so special attention is required at the weather briefing to plan a route suitable for the aircraft. Use of the autopilot when flying through icing conditions can also be restricted or even prohibited. A full deflection of the flight controls from time to time is advised to ensure free movement. A faster approach speed is typically also given in the aircraft's flight manual due to the increase of the stall speed and the possible decrease in flight control authority with icing disrupting the boundary layer. Icing is generally to be expected at temperatures below 0 to about -40. The biggest threat prevails at temperatures right below freezing to about -15 degrees. At those temperatures, supercooled liquid clouds pose a threat to producing clear ice. Below -15 degrees, mixed phase clouds produce some icing threat. At temperatures below -40, ice clouds are primarily prevalent with minimum to nil threats to accumulate ice on your aircraft. If your aircraft has ice protection equipment and is allowed to fly into forecasted icing conditions, great, but that doesn't mean that you can fly wherever you want for however long you want. Even bigger aircraft with heating devices on all the critical surfaces can face significant problems in areas with severe icing. Before diving into the types of protection systems, let's make something clear. De-ice is when you remove ice from the aircraft that is already built up, whereas anti-ice is a precautionary measure usually switched on before any ice can build up. There are 3 major anti-icing and de-icing systems out there. The most basic ones are fluids, typically found on smaller general aviation aircraft like the Cirrus SR-22 or the Diamond DF-42. Both aircraft feature a TKS de-icing system. So let's take a closer look on the TKS de-icing system of the DA-42. The Diamond DF-42 NG can be equipped with an optional ice protection system. It distributes a thin film of de-icing fluid on the wings, a vertical stabilizer, horizontal stabilizer, propellers, and canopy. This prevents the formation and accumulation of ice. It has a maximum usable fluid quantity of 30 liters. 3 different modes of operation depending on the level of icing can be used. Normal mode gives you 2.5 hours of operation, high mode 1 hour, and max mode 30 minutes. The mode of operation governs the amount of ice fluid that is squirted onto the surfaces and protected areas. A confusing fun fact: in the manuals and on the de-ice panel in the DA-42, they talk about a de-icing system, but the system is actually designed to be anti-icing, but is also capable of de-icing. A de-icing boot is a de-icing system most commonly seen on turboprops. The basic principle is that compressed bleed air from the engine is pumped into the boot, inflating it when ice has built up. Operating boots is less costly than constantly heating up the wing, horizontal and vertical stabilizers with bleed air. Boots require proper care. Small holes can lead to ineffective boots, and before every flight the pilot has to inspect the system for any scratches or possible leakages. Heating devices are anti-icing devices that protect vulnerable areas from the buildup of ice. For anti-ice systems to be effective, you must turn them on prior to reaching icing conditions. Otherwise, they will melt the ice and the water will then flow back to places that are not protected and refreezes. Additionally, big chunks of ice can come off and go through the engines. With boots, engines are usually wing-mounted or mounted in a single engine configuration. The problem with heated leading-edge anti-ice systems is that they need heat and lots of it. The heat typically comes from an engine bleed air source, and anytime you take that much heat away from an engine, you also take away a significant amount of power. For anti-ice systems to be effective, you must turn them on prior to entering icing conditions. Also, chunks of ice can come off and go through the engines. For that very reason, early models of the Cessna Citation, specifically the Cessna Citation 1 and 2, have electrically heated inboard leading edges together with bleed air operated boots towards the wingtips. The reason for that is that shedding the ice with the boots right in front of the engines could easily damage the engine, so boots are not acceptable on the wing ahead of the intake. While bleed air heated leading edges have been the norm over the last decades with transport category aircraft, new, more efficient and lightweight designs are implemented today. The Boeing 787, for example, utilizes an electronically heated anti-ice protection system. Because of its aerodynamic design, on the Airbus A350, actually less than 50% of the leading edge needs to be protected by a bleed air anti-ice system. But generally speaking, on most modern aircraft, a combination of electrically, pneumatically powered anti-ice systems are in place. Before even getting airborne, all the critical surfaces of the aircraft have to be free from any contamination. This is why in most of the bigger airports, de-icing service is provided. The aircraft will usually be sprayed with chemical de-icing fluids. 4 different fluids are available with different kinds of properties. I will not go into much detail about those fluids, but generally speaking, they are made for different kinds of aircraft categories, holdover times and contamination. Type 1 is the most widely used fluid. The performance of the fluid is primarily measured by holdover time and lowest operation use temperature. Holdover time is the length of time when the fluid will protect the aircraft from contamination. So the aircraft either has to take off within that period of time or taxi back to reapply anti-icing fluid. The holdover time is influenced by temperature, wind, precipitation, humidity, and aircraft skin properties. Typical holdover times range anywhere from 1 to 22 minutes and can get as high as 160 minutes with the Type 4 fluid. For a big aircraft, the cost of de-icing the plane, depending on the fluid type and contamination, can range up to $15,000. It takes time and is done with both engines running. Bleed air, the source for the air conditioning, is turned off to not get any chemicals into the cabin. Once the de-ice is completed, you have to rely on ground staff to tell you that your aircraft is free of contamination, as you are already in the cockpit and cannot see for yourself. Engines will be de-iced separately with hot air if during the outside check contamination or ice is found within the engine core or fan. If not correctly de-iced, fan blade damage or even engine core damage could be the result. When performing a takeoff with engine anti-ice on, the worsened performance of the aircraft has to be taken into account when calculating the takeoff distance and speeds. Icing can definitely pose a big threat to any aircraft, especially in winter with small general aviation aircraft and limited or nil ice protection. It can be quite difficult to fly. My last 3 flight lessons were cancelled due to icing. Low clouds, low temperatures are a good indicator that I'm probably not going to fly today. If you had any interesting or threatening encounters with icing before, write it down in the comments below. I would love to hear your story. Consider giving me a like if you liked the video and subscribe if you haven't already. Until the next one, stay safe.